Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every game, every week from a punting perspective. It's the round 17 punting preview with no regular recap. I'll give you my 2 or 3 minutes from the round that was, best bets results, the sharpshooter results as well. Then we'll dive into round 17 best bets. No special segments. We can just jump into our regular round. We do have 8 games to dissect. Thank you for your company as always, guys. I will highlight as many of your comments as I can, and I'll read a bunch out to add to the show as well. So please fire them through. We did go 1-1 last round, and sharpshooters, unfortunately, 0-3. I should clarify, I shared their full records for the season, and I said Undertaker was 6-7. He actually was 7-6 at the time. Tell me your highlight of round 16 or what you learnt from the round that was. We'll start Friday night. Undertaker gave that futures play, Raiders to win the minor premiership at $4. That took another step forward. West did cover the spread, but that's now 4 tight losses in a row for the West Tigers. Geez, I'm searching on my browser while live. That's pretty dangerous. But I just thought, since we'll talk about round 16 for a second, I'll put the scores up to refresh your memory. Then Saturday was just a wild one. Just a reminder of how crazy this season has been. It was mayhem, actually. We have Penrith without 5 Origin stars going into Mount Smart, out-toughing the Warriors, who were 12.5-point favourites. That's why Undertaker now is 7-7. Then we go 2,500 kilometres west, where another double-digit favourite went down. That was my Dolphins, trumped by the Knights. And then you nearly had a long odds trifecta on Saturday, because I think the game of the round was South Storm. Nearly all Origin players backed up. The Bunnies within a Latrell boot of winning, but did go down 25-24 in extra time. Johnston with 4 tries himself in the losing effort. He's only 7 tries away from Irvine's all-time record. And there's there's 9 games to go if Johnston's healthy, and that's in the regular season. You can't totally write Souths off from playing finals. So a real chance to go and get that in season 2025. Brutal loss for the Padonis with his tip of the week there on the first half. Bunnies plus 6.5. They were down 8. I'm thankful I didn't find that one in the end. My best bets took place on Sunday. So I'll roll into the Sunday triple header. And I got the win with Sharks. I copped it a little bit for trusting Cronulla again. But the beauty of that tip was that Cronulla was a 5.5-point underdog and lost by 6. But because I also liked overs, I had Cronulla's team total over, which hit before halftime. Broncos charged back, big comeback win. Benny Williamson had unders, so didn't enjoy that comeback. The Cowboys then, just as bad as the week before. Roosters rolled them. And then I got dealt my loss for the week, guys. I did tip the Titans. It says a lot about how bad a team can be when they're bottom of the ladder and they are the most disappointing team in the comp. But then you are even more disappointed by how bad they were. And I wasn't expecting a great deal from Gold Coast, but I did think they could do better than giving up 36 points to a Parasite without Moses or Dylan Brown. Let's roll straight into round 17 anyway. Spilt Milk says Broncos second half was some of the best footy I've seen in ages. Ryan, great call. Team total on Sharks. It's nice to get that easy winner. But of course, fact is I went 1-1 and my one win is $1.80. So that's like a 0.2 unit loss for the weekend. Not an enjoyable one for me. I was sort of thinking back to the days of the mixed matchup, guys. A classic mixed matchup might have been Cronulla to outscore Para, because they were both similar level underdogs. And, we would have been looking pretty good with the Sharkies, who had 28 points about 45 minutes in, but didn't score again. And Para, with a couple of late tries against the Titans, would have beat us there. So I suppose, Adam mentions Campbell being out, and I'll raise that when we get to the Titans game, but that's the 8th game of the round. I want to do my best bets, and I'm going to tell you now, best bets are brought to you by Dabble, because they're brought to you by me. And Dabble's the last revenue source I've got with the pod that covers expenses. And there are a few with this show and just my time. I know I'm preaching to the converted to tell you guys jump on Dabble, because like almost all of you already have. But if you don't, I'm talking to you. This is your opportunity to help the show, and they are well worth a look. Of course, use the code TRIPOD, then message me on Facebook, Instagram, or email tripodbetting if you have joined up. I have 3 best bets for round 17, and it starts Thursday night. You can already see the team list on the screen. I'm taking the Bulldogs, -1.5 at $1.87 on 365. I do think the Dogs are superior, near enough full strength. Penrith gets back all the Origin contingent, but still played, 5 days earlier in New Zealand. I just think that line's a little light. We'll dive right into that game, of course, and it's a beauty, and I'm looking forward to your opinions on it as well. I'm going Newcastle on Friday, +5.5 in the first half, $1.83 double. It's 4.5 on Sportsbet and 365, which is virtually as good. The Knights host the Raiders. I saw enough out of Newcastle to believe that the effort and fight is still there in their season, and some key troops were back on deck as well, and a game under their belt, the likes of Brady Best. It makes Newcastle a more threatening side. Raiders, respect them, of course, but Hudson Young is out, getting a 5.5 start. Obviously, Newcastle's had some awful first halves at home, recent memory, but they know that I expect that should be a focus. And then I'm going Dragons, Eels, either team to win 1-12 at $1.80 on 365, because I can't split those sides. I think it's going to be gritty, and it went to extra time last time. St. George and Para met. There's feeling in it. There's a sort of former players on both sides, and I don't see enough potency in probably either team to blow the other out in a year of comebacks. Even if one's up big, you're not going to write the other off. So that's why I have played either 1-12 for Dragons, Eels. Those are my 3 best bets. Comment there, sharp out. How do the Knights score points? I appreciate that, but I suppose saw Ponga had a better showing in his second game in Perth. I mentioned before Brady Best, just having a few troops back on deck for Newcastle. I still think that there's points in them there. I think, yeah, obviously Sharp's had an outstanding season, but we'll get to that game because I think that's the second one we're going to talk about. But let's begin at CommBank Thursday night. I've just told you my best bet is -1.5 Dogs. Most bookies have the line at 2.5. How about Penrith, though? They were bottom of the ladder 4 weeks ago and come into this game in the top 8. So it's been some turnaround. And I did say a few weeks ago, look, I didn't write Penrith off, but I said I don't think they're going to make finals. Like, it's worse than 50-50 that Penrith will make the finals. But then Penrith has just gone and won 3 straight games, tight ones against Tigers, Para, but got it done. And nobody would have expected that win in New Zealand on the weekend. And you combine that with what a logjam the ladder is, and you've got the 4-bye premiers alive and well. They absolutely control their destiny. You look at the Panthers' draw now, it's manageable. Like, Origin always hurts Penrith, but Penrith has a bye next time the Origin players are in camp. So they don't have to worry about that week. You'll have one more game where Penrith will have to back some players up potentially, but then just not too many really tough opponents the rest of the way. Or, like, there's a few in there for Penrith looking at the ladder, but there's also plenty of winnable games. And realistically, Penrith will make the finals if they win 12 of their games. And they currently have 6 wins with a draw in the bank as well. The Dogs enjoyed the bye after a tight win over Souths. There's extra feeling in this game, of course. There's so many Panthers ties to Canterbury. That includes the Canterbury captain, coach, general manager. But it's a role reversal. The blue and white are sitting top of the comp with a record of 11-2. Sorensen is out for Penrith, but New South Wales fans will let out a sigh of relief. When you saw the team list, you expected the Origin contingent back in for Penrith, but I didn't know if Cleary was going to play this week. So the fact that he's named, you'd feel he's very likely to be in for the Origin decider. And you'd expect that it means Cleary's right this week, although with my bet there against Penrith and on the Dogs, I'm somewhat just wondering if Cleary is 100% still managing this groin complaint. The Bulldogs have got 4 reps of their own as well who all return, which pushes Galvin to the bench. It's Sexton who remains at 7 for now. I do feel it's a great spot for the Dogs, though, to have that bye while, as I said before, Penrith's on a short turnaround and coming from New Zealand. But I do acknowledge that when you rested sort of your 5 best players or 5 Origin players, then they all come back into the team. They're all fresh. It's an excellent opportunity to sort of propel a side that showed a lot of that Panthers DNA, that premiership DNA against the TUES, who have been a top 4 side, all season long. However, I am picking the Dogs when I consider like the level that this Dog side has played at throughout the season, apart from a couple of blemishes, which both happened to occur at Suncorp Stadium. And realistically, the Dogs have had really important players out as well. Obviously, Crichton's missed games, Burton, Kickow, Preston, and these guys are back on deck here. And so I think that the Dogs are a team that's actually really well equipped to restrict what Penrith does best. And I still do go back to the fact that while like the narrative of this week is how the champs are back and no one's going to want to play them and they still can defend their title. The truth is that Penrith are a bit more mortal this year. They have sustained losses each and every sort of off season, and Penrith have a chance to win this game for sure. But I do see the Dogs winning it more than 60% of the time. The line was under 2 points. I had to lay it, but let me know if you agree. Colt, how is Cleary holding up? Can he go the distance with this niggling injury? Like, it does sound like the groin injury, it's not too serious, but it limits you. And that, and a guy that obviously dominates games with his boot as well as his, passing and running game. We saw that he was not the same player in Origin, where the injury occurred, I believe, 24 hours before kickoff. A little bit different now. This is, another 8 days after that Origin. But if Cleary's at full strength, I still think that the Doggies are a big show here. And obviously, if Cleary's limited, then you're going to feel a little bit more comfortable. JK says that Penrith played their grand final last week. Like, there is some truth to that the players poured in everything. And while you do get 5 fresh reinforcements that'll lead the way, like the others are still all have to pick themselves up and go again. And the intensity is going to be, even up a notch again against the ladder leading Dogs. Moving to Friday, it's Manly against West Tigers at 4 Pines Park. And the line is Seagulls -7.5. Manly had the bye after a sad no-show at Seabus Stadium. I touched on the Tigers. They've actually been in 4 straight tight games, but have come up short each and every time, including to Canberra on Friday. Back to Manly, though, Hamole was a huge casualty from that Gold Coast game as well. And the most interesting team news is, and we already knew this if you'd heard the reports, Turbo's been training at centre. That's where he lines up because Lehigh Hopewadi is back and is in the fullback jersey. That shifts Garrick to the wing. Speaking of fullbacks with hamstring issues, Jerome Buller has one. He's out. Mason moves to fullback. Fayunu starts in the halves at halfback, in fact, and partners Luai, who did back up for the Tigers on just 1 day of rest last week. This is an important game for both sides. I feel like some people look at the draw and they see games like Manly West or like a Eels Dragons game and think, oh, it's a bludger of a game. But I look at it as it's a must-win game. It's teams that still have hope of scraping into the finals, playing somebody else they know they can beat if they're at their best, and neither side can afford to lose it. And that's definitely how this one feels. And I love watching, games where there's a lot of desperation. I don't rate Manly a great deal. I haven't all season long. And my favourite player of theirs is Olakoatu, who's out, right? But it is still Seagulls at home, off a bye, off a bad loss. If you're ever going to get a good response out of Steve's Soldiers, it's probably this week. However, I lean to the Tigers because you're getting over a converted try. They fight week in, week out. But I do worry about a team that's getting no rewards for effort. And you get that 1 week where the straw breaks the camel's back and you get a game that slips away. And if the Tigers find themselves down, Manly is that exact type of team that will run the score up on you if you're flat. Ryan says, want to be on Tigers here. It should be a huge desperation spot for Manly, though. And he's starting to worry about those losses in winnable games affecting the Tigers' mentality. So that's sort of similar to the concern I've got and the reason I'm not on West. But the Padonis has got to play in this one. and I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. So let's review that together.
G'day, guys. Put on us here. Hope you're all well. Looking for a bounce back. Best bet round 17. Let's go to the Friday night 6 o'clock game. We're going to take the Manly Sea Eagles. That's going to be minus 5.5 at $1.84 on Sportsbet. Put simply, I think off the bye, Manly are going to come in here focused, ready to go. That performance they had against the Titans 2 weeks ago was probably their low point of the season. I just can't see them producing the same effort. Their intensity is going to be here. Lehigh Hopewadi does come back. I know that they're missing Hamoli, but I just think the rating here for Manly has dropped to a level below what they should be. Ready to take advantage of the spread here under a converted try. I think the Tigers have put in a great month of footy. They've been close in a few losses against some of the elite sides. And now coming back here, Brookvale, it's a tough trip for them, away from home, knowing the season's pretty much over. I know that the competition's close, but I think most teams on 5 wins pretty much on the outside looking in, with a lot of results still to go in their favour. So I think the Tigers could be a bit flat here. Manly come out, steamroll them. Minus 5.5, best bet. Good luck. Gamble responsibly.
I can see that from Predominance. As I said, I do expect Manly should play close to their best on this occasion. So the question is whether West can get up and fight again, and also getting that good line value. Most bookies at 6.5 or 7.5, but still a 5.5 on Sportsbet. Moving later, Friday night, it's Knights against Raiders. The line is 8.5 at McDonald Jones. So it was a great win for Newcastle in Perth. Several stars returned. Although one of those was Fletcher Sharp and he did cop a nasty injury. This week, Jacob Saifidi is back from a calf complaint, has been out several weeks. Hudson Young is being rested, although I had heard that he's also been dealing with an injury. So Sasangi is going to start in the second row. And geez, Newcastle needed that win badly. That's why I'm going to be on them this week, because had Newcastle lost, I feel like the season could somewhat spiral, but it just keeps them all interested. It was painful as a Finns fan, of course, but if you're a Knights fan, you were encouraged. You saw Dom Young back in the colours, back in the action with the try. Bradman Best barnstorming. He takes attention off Kalen Ponga. The true test now is, can the Knights back it up? And far too often we've seen the Knights disappoint their home fans, although they did get that recent extra time win in Manly. Luckily, 40 minutes or just over 40 minutes of good footy was enough there. The Raiders didn't have it all their own way against West. I was tempted to sort of take the start against Canberra last week, and I've been tempted again here, and I am going to take the first half line, as you heard, my best bet, plus 5.5 on Dabble, 4.5 on 365 and Sportsbet as well. Like, Hudson Young's been the form second rower in the comp for mine. He cannot be replaced. I don't see the line value on Sticky's men. Canberra are 12-3. I don't really want to get out in front of Canberra because I know they're having an amazing season and they're going to be tough to beat, where you have to have a little bit of faith in Newcastle because they're inconsistent. But I will play that first half line because with a few more troops back on deck, there's sort of a bit of firepower to fight back against Canberra. And it still feels ugly, but I do feel like it could be one of those wins that the Knights got last week that can potentially breathe life back into Newcastle. And I'm not afraid of ugly. I'm an ugly person myself. I'll play the ugly duckling on Friday night. We'll move to Saturday. Pretty big one to discuss next as well. Broncos hosting the Warriors. And it's Brisbane that's a favourite in this one. I don't know if that surprised some people. Brisbane 5.5 point favourites over the top 4 Warriors. Brisbane's unchanged from the side that stormed back against the Sharks. Cobbo in the reserves, but there's a bit happening behind the scenes, so I'm not sure if they would pick him or not. It's potential to improve the back line there. And Warriors have gone the opposite way, losing with Tenny Zalesniak in the defeat to Penrith. Although Rocco Berry's back from injury and Capewell, who got a rest after Origin, he'll return as well. The thing is with New Zealand, Metcalf was a passenger the whole second half. Part of the reason that the Warriors couldn't come back and beat the understretched Panthers, you really had to worry. Although after the game, Webster explained it's just a cork. So Metcalf's name to play here, but you don't know. That can still take a few days to recover from. this game does remind me a bit of the fact that, what was it, 3 weeks ago, New Zealand was a 5.5-point underdog in Cronulla. Now, I know that Brisbane prevailed on Sunday, but I think it's fair to class Brisbane and Cronulla as similar teams. So we've got the Warriors away from home against a similar level team. Well, we know how it went at Shark Stadium. What do you guys think is going to happen at Suncorp? I will annoy the Warriors fans now, and I'll say I really thought about playing Brisbane. You can lay minus $4.5, $1.90 on Sportsbet. I think those recent wins over the Gold Coast, that soft kill, and then a comeback win over a good side like Cronulla, that gives you the confidence. Those games were at home. The record's now 7-7, which is not a catastrophe, whereas 5-7 was, especially after starting 4-1. Walsh has been back in recent weeks, and look, he's dealing with a bit of pain in that knee, but you sort of think as each week goes on, removed from that injury, he's going to be sharper. Mam, obviously coming back from his long suspension, you give him another week in the team. It's allowed Madge's men to get a grip of the season again. As for New Zealand, how disappointing were they on Saturday? It was a familiar story. I've raised this so many times in the last couple of years. The Wars, they win when you expect them to lose, and sometimes they lose when you expect them to win. You want to play New Zealand as an underdog. That's what they are in this game. But I guess you got to ask yourself the question, who's the better team here? So as you guys tell me how you see it, are New Zealand the better team as currently constructed? And I'm sorry to sort of harp on things, but that Mitch Barnett loss is massive. It's monumental. And I think Brisbane's the slightly better team at this point in the season. I think the line should be at least 6. And I don't know if Metwar is 100%. So I will mention that the Warriors are going to find plenty of support at Lang Park. It'll be rocking. Brisbane's got vulnerabilities and do lose focus in periods. New Zealand's going to need to pounce on that. If the Warriors apply themselves the way they did in the Shire, they'll get the 2 points. And I do think that the Warriors pack standing up holds the key here. But I don't have a play either way because I think the line's about right. Let me read some of your comments. JK, rate the Knights. Raiders forwards are tough. Colt, are Newcastle on for an end-of-season revival like years ago? That's true that, it was around this point in the year where the Knights went on a run. I don't quite see that, but just a team having belief. It doesn't matter. You don't need to believe the Knights will make the 8. As long as they believe that they're going to make the 8, then they'll give you your value for your money, I hope. And I have only gone first half, so if the Raiders out-tough them, it doesn't matter sort of what happens in the final 20 minutes. Zane, maybe Cobbo can't handle Maguire's training regime. That basically is what I'm gathering. It's that, whether he just doesn't deal with that type of coach. And I do think Cobbo would be a good reclamation project for another team because the talent is there. And if he's just fallen out and Maguire doesn't put up with his habits, Maguire's probably one of the more intense operators. I do think somebody else would get a pretty talented player that can play, anywhere in your back line. Warriors off a bad loss. Warriors roll through them. That is from a staunch Kiwi fan. Michael Cobbo looks out of shape, 5 kgs overweight. Based Aussie. Broncos. I like the Broncos, but they're hard to trust. Ryan, I'm staying off the game. I'd lead Brisbane, but I've been wrong most Warriors games this year. And I've copped in the comments as if I've been wrong on most Warriors games, but I went back and checked every game I've had a best bet for the Warriors. And what are we? We're 15 weeks in, and I'm something like 6 wins, 5 losses in Warriors games. It's really not that bad. It's just, I don't know, the Warriors fans always remember when I don't pick them and they win. And I think Brisbane wins this, but I'm not going best bet against you if it makes you feel any better, Warriors fans. Like JK says, $2.60 is a gift for the Warriors. Like a few people thought $2.60 was a great price around Cronulla. It certainly looks that way 45 minutes in last week. As Colt says, Broncos not an 80-minute team. Adam, Waz win. And Ryan, I think New Zealand have been the better team, but Brisbane's ceiling is way higher. Like, no doubt. The Warriors deserve to be, 3 wins higher on the ladder. 2 or 3 wins higher on the ladder than Brisbane. But right now, there's question marks. There's a couple of important outs for New Zealand, and Brisbane's just got a little bit of life back. So I think you got to make Brisbane a solid favourite at home here. But I'm not ruling New Zealand out. They've shown enough this year, and they do surprise you when you doubt them. So that's why I didn't play it either way. But I do have a best bet on the next one, Eels Dragons. And that best bet is either team 1 to 12. Run your eye over the team lists, and you tell me if if one of these sides is going to win this 13 plus. St George are off a bye and blew a 12-point lead over Cronulla, which, thankfully for me, secured my round 15 best bet. The Eels did not blow their lead, which was costly for my round 16 best bet on Sunday night. Tuapolotu, Corey Allen, Sua, and is Holmes? Sorry, now I can't remember. Yeah, Val Holmes is back as well. Para get back Dylan Brown for suspension, but did lose Penasini. This is a rematch from the game, you may recall. Gutho was out for revenge against Para and was dominating early, but the Eels actually fought back, pushed it to extra time, and it was a former Dragon, Lomax, kicking the winning field goal for the Eels. It's another game. I mentioned this before. It's 11th versus 15th, but to me, that just means absolute must win for both. I was really impressed by Para on Sunday night, foiling my best bet. Iongi has had an awesome season and justified moving the king on, but Gutho will be out for a point to prove in this one. Again, trying to beat his old side. I do lean, I think the Dragons should win. I think making the Dragons a slight favourite because they're at home feels right, but there's not enough class in this Dragons 17 to blow teams away for mine. And the effort and intensity hasn't consistently been there every week either. I don't want to sound like a broken record regarding to the Dragons halves, but it's an issue, of course, but it's another reason why I think a 13 plus win is less likely, and therefore I am going to play either 1 to 12, and I do see a game that's as tight as the first encounter. Next up, my team, the Dolphins, play the Rabbitohs in a game that is rescheduled. This is the nightcap Saturday night. In terms of the venue, it was switched around because let me remind you, of course, what happened in round one. There was a cyclone in Brisbane, 2 days before the game? In fact, I think the news broke on the pod, so maybe it was 3 days before the game. They switched the venue to Sydney. Remember, I actually picked a winning bet. I had neither team to 25, but then I said, oh, that won't count because it'll void, but then it actually did count, but some people didn't play it because I assumed it wouldn't count. So that's an extra winner that, you got to have in round one that doesn't count the record. But anyway, that really did cost the Dolphins, I think. A couple of players didn't play. They couldn't really train much in Brisbane because it was that wet. Had to travel on late notice. Bunnies got to just stay in Sydney and have a home field advantage. And it was a tight game, and kicking was the difference, right? And it was a classic case of Bennett's coaching again this year, where the Bunnies have made a habit of winning games where it was anyone's anyone's match. And Rabbitohs have even won games where they've scored less tries this season. And so they've done as well as you could expect with the amount of injuries that have hit the Bunnies, because, in that game there was no Latrell. And unfortunately for the Dolphins, the Bunnies' backline is bolstered even more. Latrell's been in a few weeks. Campbell Graham is back, and Cody Walker also returns. That pushes White into the centres. The Perth trip, along with the loss to the Knights, it was extra tragic because the Dolphins lost Bostock, who's been one of the form wingers of the comp. So, again, we've got the Bennett factor here, that this is him coaching against the team that he ushered into the NRL for 2 seasons and got the better of the Finns on the first occasion. Now, something I want to note about the Bunnies, though, because I will admit I really stared at the South line. If I haven't mentioned already, did I say it's 3.5? But you can also get 4.5 about the Rabbitohs. This is a murderer's row if you look at who the Bunnies have played in their last 4, and I'm going to include my Finns. I think you can argue that the 5 best teams of the comp on form, in no particular order, are Bulldogs, Raiders, Storm, Warriors, and Dolphins. Just on form. If you want to argue with me, teams like Penrith or Brisbane went healthy, right? But if you just say those are the 5 form teams of the comp. Did you realize the Bunnies play those 5 straight weeks? And this is the 5th. The Bunnies have played the top 4 in the last 4 games. And the Bunnies have lost them all, but have had a chance to win 3 out of those 4. They've actually applied themselves really well. And you're adding some big guns into the Bunnies team this week, which will add even more threat to the attack. While I've mentioned it a few times, even when the Finns were decimating sides and scoring 160 in 3 weeks, the forwards are thin. And I feel like a night game with a bit of dew helps Souths in that regard. So I was just about ready to hit. Like, I was either going to play Souths plus 4.5 or plus 2.5 first half. But I do wonder how much energy has been spent playing the elites of the comp week in, week out. That's like playing an entire final series. And I wonder when you get a player like Walker, who's been in and out with injuries, Campbell Graham as well, whether you need a week before they're going to click into top gear. I also think that the Dolphins are, a good side that just lost a game with our 10.5-point favorite. And you're looking for a response and a rebound from that because there's still plenty to play for ahead for the Dolphins. It was a brutal loss in round 1 going back to that. And that game, that was part of a first month of footy where the Dolphins didn't win a game and had several opportunities and went close. And I thought this is going to derail the Dolphins season before it's begun. But as we know, they fought back, played awesome footy and controlled their own destiny. But if the Bunnies come in and win this game in Brisbane, it's going to hurt double the fact that the venues got swapped in round 1. And look, I think no doubt Wolf is going to appreciate the importance of this one going up against his mentor. I'm going to tip the Dolphins win narrowly in Finland, but I definitely would lean to the Bunnies, and I will be honest, I was that close to playing Souths. Some more comments. Back to the previous game, Adam says the Eels' edge defense is rank, and the Dragons' shape is great. Based Aussie, Dolphins are done now. Too many injuries. Like the Bostock one does really hurt. Rabbits have been building to a win, but Finns should be desperate. Agree with that. And I, as a Finns fan, like some of the stuff I'm saying is stating like how I see it, and some I have to admit I'm hopeful. Like I'm hopeful that there's a response by the Dolphins, and I am somewhat hopeful that the Souths have spent a fair bit. Like going to extra time against Melbourne, historically, it's not easy to bring your best footy the week after you play Melbourne because of how much goes into that. So I do think that if the Dolphins win here and potentially if they win well on Saturday, then we'll all look back and say, oh, of course, the Bunnies were just out of juice after such a tough run. And that is like the toughest stretch any team would have to play this season, those 5 games. So that's why I didn't play the underdog in that one. And I am hopeful the Dolphins will win, even if it is by a slim margin. Moving to Sunday, this is an intriguing one as well. At Amy Park, it's Storm Sharks, and Melbourne are a 9.5-point favourite. Both of these teams got out to big leads last week. They were both run down, though the Storm did eke out a narrow win in extra time. The Sharks let the 2 points slip. Neither of them covered the game last week, of course. It's a fairly recent rematch. The Sharks showed what they could do on that occasion. It was a 5-point win, I believe, for Cronulla. Kaufusi is available in the front row for the Sharks in this one. Jack Howarth is out with illness, but Xavier Coates got a rest after Origin. He returns to the Storm backline. It's a tall task to topple the Melbourne Storm twice in fairly short succession. So I am doubtful about Cronulla replicating exactly what they did do at Shark Stadium 4 weeks ago, roughly. The line reflects that, though. Like, you've got Cronulla with a better team when these sides met roughly a month ago, and yet Melbourne's nearly a 10-point favourite. And I do think Melbourne got a bit lucky against Souths. Latrell had a conversion to go in front with 3 minutes to go. Latrell had a 2-point field goal from like 45 metres out. Of course, it has to be at least 40 out to be a 2-pointer, but it just drifted to the right of the post before Melbourne wins in extra time. The Sharks have only got themselves to blame. That was a 16-point lead, I think, in the second half in Brisbane. You've got to back yourself to get that done. In fact, not just in the second half, with about 20, 25 to go. Look, we've seen the Sharks' blueprint, of course, of how they can beat the Storm and compete with Melbourne, and not just the most recent game. Cronulla's gone in and won in Melbourne recently as well. And I know I've backed Cronulla in one shape or another the last 4 weeks. So you may have been curious, was I going to be on them this week? But I don't love the Sharkies this week. And I always respect the Storm. And the Storm, one of those sides that's so good that they can have a win and treat it like a loss. Like it was a disappointing win. And that is a thing when you're as good as Melbourne are and as good as Melbourne believe they should be. So I think the Storm pack's going to stand up. Like I see the Sharks forwards as a real strength of theirs, but I actually think Melbourne's going to get the upper hand. And then if the Melbourne Storm's even playing Cronulla forwards even, and I think Melbourne probably wins the yardage, you think about that Melbourne spine on a sunny afternoon, how many openings they're going to create, and the fact that Brisbane scored, 34 against Cronulla, it's hard to say the Storm won't have as much success. The reason I'm not on the Storm is just because the market is very high on them. Adam mentioning that Storm have got revenge in mind. Bookies haven't missed them. Exactly right. Like if this line was a little lower, I'd probably be on Melbourne, but the market's so aware of how dangerous the Storm are, and the people love to build same game multis around the Storm with several players to score, especially in an afternoon game. Ryan, Gut says Storm, no bet for me. Colt, Sharks at the line is a gift, not sold on Melbourne yet. You know, Melbourne haven't been as good as you probably would expect and nearly did lose on the weekend. So I think that's a fair call. Like maybe there is value just fading the Storm with the line until they really prove it and completely click into gear. And this is a Melbourne side I still think should be favourites to win the comp. And they know it as well. And their aim is not to peak in June and July. It's to peak in September. So maybe there are going to be opportunities to pick off going against the Storm. But when the team had already beaten them recently, I think, and as I said before, the fact that Melbourne are one kick away from losing last week, I think this is one where you get Melbourne's full attention. I would not go against them. Base says both teams are overrated, but I trust Storm more. Sharks are on my do not bet list. Like you got burned as well if you did take Cronulla plus 5.5 last week. You felt fine about it when it was 28-12? Not so much when Cronulla didn't score again and lost 34-28. So I understand that. In fact, while I don't have a play on this one, a couple of the sharpshooters are in on this game. Let's listen to Nicole first. He'll probably have a long shot.
Hey everyone, it's Nicole from Wiki. Look, my pick for this week, Nelson Asofa Solomona. So he's $11 on Bet365 to score a try this weekend. Scores a try just over every 6 NRL games. So obviously a good price if you look at that. The Storm are obviously in the middle of the origin period, so he might get a few extra minutes, but I also think that he's just been in awesome form after a few different injury issues and off-field issues in the last year or two. So all the best. Punt responsibly as always in Google Wiki, Linktree, our Discord is humming along. Odds comparison tool for NRL and Origin, a whole bunch of content all in the one place, all for free. Good luck.
Loves a try by a middle, Nicole. Let's listen to the Undertaker.
G'day guys, Matty here. 7-7 for the season, so I've really got to get going. That's the definition of average. My bet of the week is going to be Melbourne Storm, team total over 27.5. It's $1.85 on Ladbrokes. In 6 games played at Amy Stadium, they're averaging 42 points a game, which is just a whopping number. In 5 out of 6, they've gone 30 plus. The Sharks defense is not a unit that I'm impressed with or believe in. So give me the Storm to score 28 points or more against a pretty ordinary Sharks team. Good luck.
I like that. I told you I looked at Melbourne markets and I felt they're such significant favourites that you're not getting any sort of bargains there. But I was thinking Melbourne team total overs as well. And I mentioned before, Cronulla's just given up 34 to Brisbane. Melbourne at home is every bit as sharp and every bit as frightening. So Undertaker with an over there. Let's move to last game to discuss. Titans Cows, not the best one. It's another game where people will probably be like, oh, what a snooze fest. And I do have to ask the question, does anyone know exactly how it works with the TV scheduling? Because this is the Channel 9 game. If you don't have Foxtel or KO, you only get to see, 3 games a week. And how is it that Sharks Storm is not the prime sort of Sunday game and viewers are going to be treated to Titans Cowboys? But is it Is that because Foxtel somehow gets to trump 9 and they want the game exclusively on Fox and KO? I just thought that they generally put a decent game at 4 p.m. on a Sunday. It's also something that's scheduled many, many weeks out, right? So maybe it just wasn't anticipated that this would be a dud. The Titans are without Jaden Campbell. That situation is pretty unfortunate, and I'm not getting into this because we lost the best bet, because ultimately the best bet the Titans loses because they give up 36 points to Parramatta, and I didn't predict that. But an independent doctor thought that Jaden Campbell had category 1 symptoms. That meant that Campbell was pulled off the field when he didn't even feel any effects himself, and was pretty puzzled as to why he was getting taken off. And that actually rules Campbell out for 2 games for the Titans, which definitely hurts this week. There's a disparity in talent when you look at the Cowboys. Clifford's recalled into the halves. Purdue shifts to center. Cotter and Robson are big inclusions as well. That's why you have to favor the Cowboys here, even on the road. But they were awful. In fact, the Cowboys were awful 2 weeks in a row. You go back to smashed at home by the Finns and then smashed away by the Roosters. So one of the reasons I haven't got a best bet in this game is, like, how can you trust either team's definitely going to show up? It feels like a very high variance game, and it's a bounce back spot for both sides. And the Titans are underdogs, but they are at home and still have a few capable players that you'd hope would want to prove something after such a disappointing loss. Like, Des is very much on the hot seat. That's why I'm happy to pass it. Though if I had to play, I think there's something wrong about the Cowboys that I can't quite figure out. Remember, I was on them against the Dolphins plus 6.5, and they lost by nearly 50. And while I wasn't on last week, I didn't play Roosters, and I thought the Cowboys might be a little bit better, and they were blown out again. So I'm wondering if it's just a rotten season for the Cowboys. I'm just not seeing them willing to sort of do the hard yards and fight and show resilience in games, but then neither are the Titans. So maybe the play in this is just like over 60.5. While I don't have a best bet to add, we do get to end the show with one from Benny Williamson. So let's listen to that.
G'day, punters. Benny from Benny's Best Bets. As always, thanks to the lads for having me on. Sorry for that rubbish tip last week. Sometimes it's the right bet or a good bet and it's just losers. Last week, I don't know. I was too into the stats there. Fast game at Suncorp through the day. Flew overs. Is what it is. Anyway, so this week we're going to move forward with Jeremiah Nanai against the Titans this weekend. He's got an 80% strike rate, scored in 4 out of 5 against them, picked up a couple of doubles in that as well. 1 from 1 at Seabus, and he's attacking that weak Titans right on the Cowboys' strong left edge. $2.90 on TAB, good price. That's good enough for me. Cheers, lads.
Is it just me, or does it always look like Benny's sitting at the barber? I don't know. I think that's just his style of T-shirt. It sort of looks like what they put over you when you get a haircut. Not that I know, I don't really need haircuts anymore. Some comments there. Ryan said he maybe go alt line for Cowboys like 13 plus, and I talked about the the high variance. Aaron saying Cowboys halves combo with their old, or their original halves combo from earlier this year should be too strong. JK, Cows Titans, schoolboy defense. Titans are on the no bet list. Colt, a fear for my Titans, big ins for the Cowboys, and they're desperate. That's ultimately probably the right read there. So maybe I should have been on the Cowboys, but it probably goes back to me thinking that the Titans are the least popular team in the competition. So you really need actually strong reasons to get out and bet against the Titans. As counterintuitive as that sounds, why would you need a lot of good reasons to bet against the worst team? It's because the bookies know they're the worst team. Nobody really wants to bet on them. So you're not going to get value betting against bottom of the ladder unless you're really finding the right spot. But maybe that is the case with a Cowboys team that's been as bad in the last few weeks. So Cowboys or nothing for me, but just like the Titans won as a big underdog at home to Manly and won by 20 points, they've got that in them as well to just put up a surprise performance. Zed says Titans middles win it for them. An edge to the Titans forward pack as well, which somewhat counteracts the fact that the Cowboys have got better playmakers. But again, speaking of playmakers, you're going to miss Jaden Campbell on an afternoon like this. Adam, Titans right edge has been smoked when Weaver plays. So love that for Benny, who is taking Nanai. So you've got my 3 best bets. You've heard from 4 of our sharpshooters. Really appreciate everyone that's weighed in. Love having your company every week, guys. That is a wrap for round 17. So best of luck. Let's continue the conversation in the comments wherever you find this video. Hope you enjoy your week, enjoy the footy, and we'll be back in 7 days' time to preview round 18. Lego.